Phone cases are a great low-cost item to offer in your print-on-demand store. However, they pose some unique design challenges. From size differences to random camera placement, it can be tricky to make your design actually look good. In this video, I'll show you how to solve those problems and how to sell your phone cases with Printify. We'll look at two design styles, a seamless pattern that allows for a pretty flexible placement anywhere on a phone case, and a design with a more complicated layout and text that we want to make sure it doesn't get cut off across the different phone models. So let's jump in. What's up guys, it's Trent, and today we're talking about how to design phone cases in Printify. This is a new type of video for me, so let me know down in the comments if you want to see more print-on-demand tutorials. So back to our phone cases, the company I like to use is Printify. I'll put a link down in the description below so you can check them out. Now to be clear, Printify themselves don't actually make products, rather they provide a unified interface to companies that do make the products. So let's look at the phone cases and see what they have available. You can type phone cases in the search bar here, or you can access the catalog. And under accessories, there's phone cases. Now there are lots of options here and it's very easy to get overwhelmed. We can scroll through here and see many different models and providers. And they have different features. Some are clear cases here. Some have this flip case design style here. So on Printify, you'll also see this listing of sizes here. So for phone cases, this is going to be how many different types of phone it supports. For example, all the different iPhones or Samsung or Google phones. I want to make sure I support iPhones and Android phones. And one brand I've liked in the past is this Tough Case here from WOYC. So I'll click on it. It's also a bestseller, so that gives me some confidence. Now when you click on an item in Printify, you see all the information about that product. Let me scroll down here. If we click provider info, we'll get lots of details of what models are supported. So I'm gonna click on that. And here we can see all the different models that are supported for this phone. Tons of iPhones. I'll scroll down. We have some Google Pixels here. Some pretty recent Samsung Galaxies. I personally have a 23 Plus, so I'm looking forward to using that one. So what you'll notice is that there's a price here, and then there's a Printify Premium price. So because I have Printify Premium, I'll be getting this premium price here. So this is what the phone case is going to cost us, the designer, when our customer orders it. And by the way, one thing I like is that all the prices are the same here. In the old days, they used to be different a little bit by like $1 plus or minus, depending on the phone type, but it's quite convenient for pricing now that they're all the same. There's also different surfaces for this one, glossy and matte, but I think to keep it simple, I'm just going to choose the matte option later on when we do our designs. Now another cost when doing print on demand, unfortunately, is shipping. So let's see what the shipping prices are for these phones. I'm in the US, so I can see it's $5.49 for the first case they buy. And if they buy multiple ones, the additional items will be $3.49. So let's assume we like this phone and let's click Start Designing. Now I'm actually not going to use the interface here to design the phone case itself. I'm going to use Affinity Designer. You can use whatever product you like as well, but we will have to use this interface eventually no matter what to upload our finished files. So you can actually create your product from scratch here, or you can just upload the finished work that you've done in some other program like Affinity Designer, Canva, Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever you like. Now this whole interface changed about a week ago, so I'm glad I procrastinated in making this video so it's not instantly outdated. So this is a little bit different than it used to be, but it's not that complicated. But I do just want to go over the basics here so you kind of have an idea of how this works. So I'll close this window on the left for the time being. So of course we have this design template in the middle. Now by default, this is just the iPhone 15. I can add the other phone options in here as well. So I'll click Select Variants. And you can see we have all the different phones here, all the Google and Samsung phones. I'll click this box here to select them all. And for the surface, like I said, I'm just going to do matte. It doesn't really matter now, but I'm just going to select it that way. So now when I did that, you could see all the different options came up here. And as I click through each one, you can see the template changing. Actually, if I go to the Samsung ones, you'll see it's dramatically different than the iPhone ones. So what does this white and gray in here mean? Well, essentially white is our safe area. When something in our design appears in the white, we're guaranteed that it will show up on the actual phone. Now gray is the bleed area, and when you're designing anything with print on demand or book covers or something in the real world, you need to account for bleed because the printer can't put the image exactly on your product. There's going to be a little bit of wiggle room that you have to account for. So our design will kind of be cut off somewhere randomly in this gray area. We don't know exactly where, so we have to make sure our design fills the whole gray area to the edges. And generally, you want to make it so that that area really isn't anything important. If you have a repeating pattern, you can easily just repeat your pattern into the gray area. If you have something that's like a painting or a composition, you want to make sure that this part isn't that essential. So for example, maybe it's extra sky or extra landscape or just kind of extra background for your character. So they do have some pre-made graphics here. I'm just going to choose one just to show you an example, but then we're going to definitely go and make our own graphics afterwards. Let me add something like this cat there, and I can resize it. So I'll put it like this. And it looks like it's positioned pretty well. Now I'm on the iPhone 8 right now. Let's see how it looks on some of the other phones. So I'll click around. So I went to the Google Pixel 5 and immediately you can see an issue. Our design is being cut off. And actually if we go to preview, we can see what it would look like. It doesn't look that great with our image cut off there. Let's look at another one. So this is the iPhone 15. Not as bad as the other one, but still kind of annoying. Samsung Galaxy S21, again, kind of frustrating. So I'll go back to the edit menu here. Now what you can do is make specific designs for each phone. So right now I'm on the S21. See how it doesn't look that great? It's cut off here. What I can do is if I scroll down, I can click Make Specific Design for Galaxy S21. So I'll click this. And now you see this is a little blue check mark. That means I'm just editing this phone's model. So I'll put it there. And I can do that. Now if I click to the S21 FE, let's do that. You'll see this one is back to our default setting. So once again, I can click Make a Specific Design for that one. And I can resize it. Now for a simple element like this, maybe that's what you could do, but sometimes when designs are a little more complicated, it's not that easy to just independently move elements around for different phones. So I'll show you how to deal with this problem in the second design. Let's look at a simpler use case first, which is making a seamless pattern. So a style I really like are retro 80s patterns. And I think that'd be kind of a fun style to put on a phone. Now one name for this genre is called Memphis design, so let's search Google for some inspiration. I'll type Memphis design. And we can see there's lots of results here, but I like to click on images to get inspiration, so let's do that. And you can see all these kind of colorful patterns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a working document in Affinity Designer, and this is going to be my design file. So let me open Affinity Designer here. I'll just create a new file, and I'll make it just 20 inches by 20 inches. This is going to be all vector anyway, so we'll be able to scale it to whatever output we want. I'll click Create. I like to build a little mood board in my workspace because it helps give me some ideas and inspiration. So I'm going to look through these patterns and see which ones jump out at me. I think this one here is pretty cool. Let's just copy the image. I'll put it in my file here. Now in Affinity Designer, you can add images to this margin area here. And that's done by View, View Mode. Make sure Clip to Canvas isn't checked. You can also do the slash key for that, so I can toggle on and off. So this is an abstract art form, of course. So I'm just looking at what are the patterns and what are the ideas that people are using. I see lots of geometric shapes, lots of very kind of flat colors. This one has some interesting textures. I like the stripes and dots. One of my rules is if something makes me stop scrolling, I always copy and paste it just because even if I like it or I don't like it, the fact that it made me stop scrolling and look at it means there's something there, something worth paying attention to. So I think this is a good starting place. This kind of gives me an idea of the genre. I can look at this and I can kind of see what are the primary components and ideas that are working in this art style. Now, when you're dealing with an abstract art form, it can be very overwhelming because it kind of seems like anything goes, but actually the opposite is true. When you're dealing with abstract art, you kind of have to make your own rules and kind of limit the scope of your design to begin with. So I try to put some constraints on my design initially just so I'm not overwhelmed with all the different options out there. And when I say constraints, this can be the shapes you use or the colors you use or just any other kind of concept or rule that you just want to follow. And later on in your design, if you decide to break it, you certainly can. So I think to begin with, I'm just going to make my background black. I'm just going to say we're going to use a black background. And I'm going to start designing some basic shapes that I want to have. Seems like a triangle is a pretty good shape. Let's start with that. I'll just give some temporary color. Maybe we'll also have an outline of a triangle, so I'll take out the middle fill. And I'll give it a stroke. I like the ideas of these circles with the lines through them. Let's see if we can create one of those. So I'll create a circle here. I'll make it white. And I'll put these stripes through it. And I'm just going to make it red for the time being so it stands out. We're going to subtract these from the circle and just cut them out. Now, of course, these stripes aren't even at the moment. What I can do is I can select them. And I can click this button up here. I can center them. And I can space them vertically evenly. So now they're even there. Let's see how I want the circle to appear behind it. I think that's pretty good. Actually, I want to copy these for a moment. So let's subtract these lines out of our circle. So with these all selected, I'll select this Boolean subtract. And now I have a pretty cool shape here, I think. The reason I copied them is because I want to do it again with another shape. I want to make sure I have the same distance here. Let's do it with a triangle. Let's cut this out and see how it works. I think that also looks pretty cool. So we're just kind of building our palette here of ideas. I'll continue adding shapes and then I'll show you what my final palette looks like. Okay, so I designed just some random shapes here. I chose some colors. You have some zigzags here, some triangles, some circles and squares. Let's start building a seamless pattern from this now. Now I've done a previous video on seamless patterns, but I'll go through the process again so you can see it. So what I like to do with these designs is put the big elements down first and then use the smaller elements as kind of filler later on when I need to fill in gaps and spaces. So let's start with a couple of the main shapes, and I like this circle here, so let me copy it. And what I like to do to begin with is establish a couple of the seams that go from one end to the other. So I'm going to turn on the snapping tool here. And the way we can get seamless patterns, we can take our object here and we can put it against this edge here. And you'll want to see this green line here. So if I zoom in, you can see it's touching the edge there. That's what that green line told us. So I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to copy the shape to the other side. And I'm going to make sure I get that green line over here. So I'll zoom in and you can see it's touching there. So now I need to make sure these are aligned vertically. So let me select both of these. And if I zoom in, you can see they're a little bit off. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say align middle. And now what happens is if I drag these two items anywhere here, they're going to be a seamless pattern because they're both aligned along the edge initially. And now whenever I drag them, they're on that common offset. Now I can't go to the corner. I'll show you how to do that later, but I can go anywhere on this edge as long as I don't cross over the corner. Let me do one with the triangle for the top and the bottom. So I'll choose this shape. I'll go here and I can see it snapping towards that edge. So you see it's perfectly aligned. Let me copy and paste it down here. Now you can see I'm catching this edge down here. Now again, we need to make sure they're aligned in the middle. So I'll click on both. And then I'll click Align Center this time. And now what I can do is I can drag these anywhere I like. So I think at this point, it's a good idea to test our pattern. So I'm going to export it and then I'll show you how to test it. So I'll do an export here. I'll do it as a PNG. And I'll just call it Demo1 version 1. So I'm going to create a new file. And this is just going to be for test purposes. I'm going to drag a square here. And now I'm going to use the gradient tool here. So I have the gradient tool selected. And for type, I'm going to select bitmap. And now I'm going to select the file I just exported. And I'll click and drag so we get some type of repeating pattern here. And we can see it looks seamless. So we want to zoom in and make sure it actually is. So we know our triangle is on a seam. So it looks pretty good there. I don't see any break or anything like that. Let's look at the circle. I don't see any seam or any break there. So we know these two elements are working well for our seamless pattern. Now one thing that's a good trick for patterns like this is to hide your repetitions. And of course it's a seamless pattern so it is repetitive, but we can do certain things to kind of trick the viewer into thinking it's not. So I'm going to take this circle here, I'm just going to copy it. I'm actually going to put it over here. Maybe I'll rotate it a little bit. I'm going to take these two guys, I'm going to drag them lower. This is going to make it a little harder for the viewer to see the repetition of these big shapes. I want to add in a triangle too. I'm starting with the big shapes here. Let's start adding some of these ideas in here. And if you're going to repeat an element, like I'll repeat this over here, it's a good idea to rotate it a little bit differently. So it adds a little variety. I'll take this element here and I'll put this in a corner. So let me show you how that will work. So one thing we can do is we can just center it on the corner here. And sometimes it's a little tricky because it's going to try to center on different things. So I have it centered on that corner. I'll move another one over here. Center that one. Let's do one down here. Here we go. Let's do one more. So these four objects will be centered on the corner and it's going to look like just one object. Let's export it again and test it. So I'll do our bitmap fill again. And I'll choose version 2. So if we zoom in, we can see this is actually built from 4 different corners, but we don't see it because it's actually lined up well. And also, by the way, if I zoom out, this goes to what I was saying before. The multiple circles make it so it's not as obvious where the pattern is. So I'll keep adding in elements here. I'm just kind of rotating things around, just seeing like what looks good. It's very subjective, of course. I also like to think about what colors are too close to each other. Sometimes you don't want the same color really close to each other. So with the main elements in place, what we can do now is start to add the tinier fill elements to fill in some of the gaps. So I see there's a big gap here. Maybe I'll take one of these shapes and I'll fill it in there. I'll put one down here. Maybe I have some of these zigzags. And as you put new stuff in there, you're going to constantly find yourself moving things around just to get the balance right between the negative space and the objects. Just make sure that when you do anything that goes across the seams, you're moving both elements together at the same time. So I'll continue working on this and then I'll show you the final result and then we'll start looking at how to put this on a phone case. Okay, so here's the final result of the pattern. I played with it a little bit more, kind of put things in just the places I wanted them to. And let's look at the test pattern here. You can see this is how it looks when it's all laid out seamlessly. And I know in my design, this yellow triangle and blue square, that's the corner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for that. So it's right here, so I'm gonna zoom across. And I don't see any breaks. I'll zoom up and down. Everything looks pretty good. So I think this pattern is good to go. I exported it as a PNG. Now let's go to Printify and put it on a phone. So I'm back at Printify and I'll click on the phone we chose. It was this bestseller one here from WOYC. I'll click Start Designing. And now I'll click Upload, and this will let me upload a file. So I'll say My Device. And I'll choose the file. And it's uploaded. So what I can do is I can resize it the way I want. And the key to this is to click on this pattern button over here. And this is going to repeat our design. And even after we do that, we can still resize it to be the dimension we want. If I scroll up, our DPI is ridiculously good, so I'm not too worried about size. We can do any kind of size we want. Of course, it's not really going to be that DPI when it prints. It's just going to max it out at 300, but this gives us a good idea that we're pretty well above the quality standards. And you see when we do the pattern, it's filling in all of the bleed area as well. Now, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but one thing you notice in the Printify Designer are these white lines here where our pattern begins and ends. And it's definitely something you want to verify. In my experience, these lines always appear in the editor, but you want to make sure they aren't actually in your file. So let me show you how to do that now. So I've opened the file in Affinity Photo here, but you can open it in any graphics program. And I just like to zoom in and double check the edges here to make sure there's no actual white lines. You should always do this whenever you download a seamless pattern from any website. I've downloaded so many seamless patterns from Creative Fabrica and other websites that actually have some type of fault in them that doesn't make them work. But looking at our image here, everything seems to be fine. So I'm confident that this is working. Now what I can do is I can select all the other phones here. So I'll do that. And I'll just do the matte surface. So I'll update this. And we can preview how all the other phones look. And again, because it's a seamless pattern, the camera placement doesn't really bother us too much. Let's look at the preview and see what the mockups look like. So here we have this phone here. Here's another iPhone, really small camera, but our pattern's repeating, so it still looks great. Here we have one of the Samsung phones with a crazy camera design. So you see that seamless patterns really work well across many different phone types. Now if you want to continue pushing this to your store, you could click Save Product. And then we could click the Publish button down here. So right now I have a demo pop-up store, and I could click Publish and it'll publish it to that store. But I won't go too much into that in this video because this is more about the design aspects. So we've done a pattern-based design. Let's now look at something that's a little more complicated. Something where we can't just click repeat pattern and it's going to automatically work. So you remember the cat demo here, and really the problem is that these cameras are going to be placed in random positions. Now to show you the scope of the problem, one thing you can do is you can click this eye here, product info. You can actually download the design template. So let me download the template and show you what it looks like. So I downloaded and unzipped the template here, and it's actually, you can choose between Adobe Illustrator files, PNGs, or Photoshop files. What I did is I put the PNGs all in one document, so let me show you them all at a glance. So I imported all the PNGs, and you can kind of see the scope of the issue here. If we just kind of scroll around, how do we make a design that can work on all these different formats? So you can see big differences between this Samsung 10 Plus, iPhone 11. We have these other phones down here with the cameras that go up and down. So one thing I did is I created this little template area here. And I kind of made it to find the safe space that I can work in. So the ratio of width to height is 1 wide to 1.74 height, but it can be changed a little bit. Let me hide the numbers. So I want to imagine if the important parts of my design were in the green area, could this work? So let me bring it over this. It seems like that would fit. Same thing with the S21 Plus. Again, I can resize it. That's okay, as long as I don't change the proportions. Let me go up to some of these guys. Seems like that would fit pretty well. I want the gray to go out of the bounds, but I want to make sure that the green part is within that white area. So I think I found a good ratio here. So as I said, the ratio of this was 1 to 1.74. I'll create a new document. I'll make it 10 inches wide by 17.4 tall. That should be very big for a phone. So I'll create this. And then if I take this template here, I'll copy it over. I'll resize it to fit this. And there we have the area we want to work in. So when I'm doing my design, I want to make sure the important stuff is in the green area, and then kind of filler elements will be in the gray. So I decided for this design, I kind of wanted to do like a gothic dark theme for it. Something maybe based on tarot cards or something like that. So I'm on Creative Fabrica and I'm searching for graphics, and I like this one here. It looks like it has some pretty cool elements to it. I want to do something with this witch design, I think. And the POD license is there, so we can use it for that. So I'll download it. I also may want some colorful background paper for something, so I'll download this one also. So I'm gonna download some of these assets that I like, make sure they have the POD license, and I'm gonna build a palette like I did before. So I'll show you what that's like when I'm done. So I downloaded these elements here. You can see I have this witch character here. I got some paper texture. I got a frame down here. And I think like because it's a tarot card, I'm gonna have some type of label on it on the bottom. So I have my template here. I'll just turn down the opacity. And I'm gonna like roughly block in my design here. So I think I want her to be somewhere in the middle. I want the frame to be around her. Let's center it. And I want some type of text banner below it. Let's center that. So let's turn our template back on, see how we're doing. Seems like we're a little outside of range. Let's bring this in. So my safe area here is defined pretty well. As long as I stay within these borders here, I'm okay. So I'm gonna turn off my template. And let's add some more details to this design here. I wanna add a background to her in this frame. And that's what I had this idea for. Let's put this in there. Now you can see it's going outside of the frame, so I wanna create an area in here that contains it. So let's move this out of the way. So this frame here is a vector. What I could do is use the shape builder to create an area to contain it. So I'll do that. So we have this red area here. So I use the shape builder on this curve to put a red area in there. Now the red's just temporary. So I have the woman down here on this layer. Let me drag her into the red. So I put the woman in the red curve there. Now I can do the same thing with this paper. So I'll drag it into the curve. I'll put the woman above it. So now we have this framed area. I'm gonna get rid of the red fill, even though you can't see it. And it looks like there's a border too. Let me get rid of that. So now we have it contained into our border here. I think instead I'm going to put this paper in there. And I'll drag the paper in. And again, I'll put the woman above it. And for this background paper, I want to use a blend mode because I just want to get a little bit of these flowers. So let's see what we can do there. I like the way linear burn looks, so let's do that. This area on the left is looking a little empty. I brought in some additional flowers here. So let's bring that in. Drag it into the frame. And again, you can see we're clipping into the frame here. So again, we'll do some type of blend mode here. Maybe multiply. Multiply looks really nice. I had some other flowers too, so let's bring these guys in. We could even just put some over here. Let's try multiply again. I do like the way that looks. Maybe make the woman a little bit bigger. One thing I noticed about this woman graphic is it's a little too transparent. It seems like her arm there is having a little bit of a transparency issue. I'm going to go into the pixel persona and just fix that up a little bit. Let's just use a soft round brush. Just clean this up a tab. So before, after, before, after. It's not the world's greatest touch-up job, but it'll do. Some of the hair here could be cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to mask that out. Add a mask. Again, this is what's so great about Affinity Designer is you can do these little pixel adjustments when you want. Let's get rid of some of this. Let's get rid of some of the gray here. Fix this up a bit. So far, so good. So let's add some text here. And I also want to add some texture to this label here. So I'm going to copy my paper. And this was a vector I downloaded again. Once again, I can use the shape builder to add in areas that I want to clip into. So select shape builder. And I'll just make it red so you can see what I did. So now I'm just going to add them together, Boolean add. So it's one shape. And now the paper, I'm going to drag it over it. And then with the curve here, I'll drag the paper over the curve, the name curve, and it clips in there. It's a little bright. Let's rotate it around. I'll find kind of a dark area. And I can make it darker, but I'll just try to find a good place to begin with. So let's say this tarot card is going to be called The Witch. The Witch. Looks pretty good. Looks like something that would be on a tarot card. This font, Centaur. Now let's start thinking about the background. So I found these textures I like, and they claim to be seamless. Let's make sure they actually are. So this is the one I like, this Celestial Night 009. So let's do our due diligence and test that it actually is a seamless pattern here. I'm just creating a test document. I'll create a background. And then again, I'll do the bitmap fill. Now I'll choose that paper here. So I'll scale it. And I'm scanning across it. Looks pretty good. Up and down. I don't see any breaks anywhere. I think this is the corner here, so let's pay particular attention to this. I'll zoom across. And looks like it actually works fine. So let's add a background. And I'll fill it in with that graphic. So this could be a design here. So let me do a few touch-ups to this and I'll show you the final result. So here's the final result of our composition-based design. I changed the levels a bit and tweaked the colors. For the woman, I did a vibrance and levels adjustment, so I'll toggle this before and after. So this is before, after, kind of subtle. For the background, I wanted to give it a little more punch, so I gave some levels and vibrance adjustments. So before, after. So let's export this and see how it looks on the phones. So I'm back in Printify. Let's go to our phone case. Start designing. I'll select all the phones. So I'll upload. So I uploaded it and you can see it's not filling the bleed area. But what we can do is we can click the fill to area button. And that is this up here, fill to placeholder. So now it's going to fill this whole area. Let's look at a preview here, a mock-up. And here we have our design. You can see the main images fitting in there very well. And that pattern in the background is covering all the extra space. Now you should verify the other designs also, because sometimes just because you fit it to one doesn't mean it fits to the other ones. So let's go through here. iPhone 15, that looks good. I'm clicking through them. These ones look good. Now if you wanted to make it a little bigger on one design, you could always scroll down and say make a specific design for the one you have selected. And I could drag and make it a little bit bigger if I chose. So as long as you're in that safe area, you're good to go. So I'll click preview here. And you can see we're filling that space really well. So I'll go back to edit. So because the iPhone 13 has this blue dot, that means we have a specific layout for that one. And you may have to go through and lay out some of them like that, but it's definitely easier when you've designed your image like this with lots of buffer room on the edge. So you can resize it and fill in that spaces if you want to. Just remember that if you've resized it and you don't have the blue dot, you're resizing it for all your designs. So here we know the Galaxy S23, it seems to be cut off a little bit. Let me make a specific design for that one. And I can see I have space to drag it down, so I'll just drag it down a little. And we're still in there. So I can see with this S21, it looks like we're a little small. Let's make a specific design for that. I'll zoom it up a bit. Oh, let's preview it. And I like the way that's organized there. Now one thing you can also do is when you move things around, you can make sure you center them. So these buttons down here will center it, so I'll do that. Let me move it down, center it. So I do like the way that one looks. And, you know, something else we could do with this empty space here, you could put like a moon graphic or something else there if you wanted to fill that in also. But just know that on different models, it's not always going to show. So when you've positioned all the images where you want, you can click Save Product. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to order a sample for myself. And ordering a sample on Printify, you just create an order and send it to yourself. So I would go to the Orders button here. And you can say create order, manual. And then amongst all your products, you would select the one you wanted here. So I'd choose my phone case. And then I'd select the design I wanted. So I have an S23 Plus, so I would select that one. And then you just go through here, choose your address and payment method. So I'm going to order some samples here, and then I'll show you what they look like. So it's been about a week and my samples have arrived. I sent the manufacturing order on February 26th, and they arrived in the mail on March 6th. This is all within the US. They were printed in New York, I believe, and they were shipped to me a few states away, so it took about a week for them to arrive. So let's check them out. The packaging is quite nice and efficient with a cushion feel that I think will protect the case as well. And overall, I was very happy with the designs. The colors are sharp and vibrant, and the blacks are also very strong. It fits really well on my phone, which I can't really show because I'm filming with my phone, but it's a nice, snug fit. I also really like the way that designs wrap around the edges. If I had to give one criticism, it's that the cases are still a little on the slippery side, even with the matte finish. But it's a pretty minor criticism, and I got used to it in short order. By the way, I ordered these cases with Printify Premium, which means they were $3 cheaper than normal, which practically doubled my profit margin. If you'd like to sign up for Printify Premium, check out my link down in the description below. So what do you think of these designs? I plan to do more print-on-demand videos in the future, so if you have any products you want me to check out, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.